I have Sam Armstrong here. Sam is a local resident from New Windsor, formerly worked for Maroney's Harley-Davidson, and that's kind of what we were going to talk about today. I have a poster, an original poster of 1952 of the dealership, which was Cobra Lines at that time, and Jim Maroney purchased it in 1956. So, Sam, you worked in 1956?
I was there in 56, yeah. I was still in school, but I worked there on Saturdays and just did bicycle repairs, and maybe I changed the chain on the guy's 74 or something. I was into that type of thing because I had my own motorcycles and I could do that type of work.
So you were 17 in 56? No.
Yeah, 17, yeah.
You were 17, so
Yep.
you already had the Cushman scooters and stuff?
Yeah, I had plenty of experience with all that kind of stuff, the Cushman scooters, 125 Harleys, and the 45-inch Harley I had. And so it was nothing that I wasn't unfamiliar with, and they would let me do quite a bit of things. And it was a good place to work. It was an education, and they were good people. He was a nice guy. George Coberline was a little short, soft-spoken guy you really got to like.
And I think what you see in the dealers that really survived for the long haul were family dealerships that for generations they stayed owned by the family. They really cared about their customers. They were serving generation after generation of people. The Harley dealers in the last 10 years they basically bought them corporately. Like in Connecticut, the BMW dealer owns one. Or
Yeah, it's no good.
it's not really the same.
No way, no way. It can't
personally.
be. Them days, Coberline knew everybody that walked through the door personally. He took care of you personally, and if you had a little problem, you could ask him a question. I had a 125. I wanted to put rings in, and I went down and got the rings off of him, and I think they were only $1. And he told me how to watch out for putting them in. They got pins in them. They got to go a certain way.
And if you think of how they operated, if you look in a Harley parts book from the 1950s or even later, there's things in there for 10 cents. Could you imagine you're selling the guy one nut for 10 cents? I mean, how would even
Oh, it's
make
a little
money?
hard for me to recognize that today when I see the prices of the things, and I'm saying, wait a minute, a windshield in them days, deluxe windshield sold for like $30. How can you justify $200 for a piece of plastic? But I guess it's all relevant.
It seems like everything is by at least a power of 10.
I would say by 10. Well, housing and everything is.
In there.
Yeah.
So basically, these are local businesses. We talked about Maroney's, which was the 9W office, 9W shop. That's Mid-Hudson Oxygen, which was the welding shop on Walsh Avenue.
Yeah, but they originally started up on First Street or
You're right.
something in Newburgh.
In back of Grace Church.
Yes, that's right where they were.
And you knew that.
Oh, yeah, because I had to go. You only had a couple of places to go to get acetylene
Right.
and oxygen in them days. And,
Well, the lady
I
that
think
volunteers is the wife, is Susan.
Okay.
Susan Schaefer.
Yeah, probably knew her back then, but I didn't know her.
Right.
I mean, but
So you're right, and then they moved to the big place there. And now we're actually in the Myron building, which is 250 Lake Street.
yes,
They were on what?
you're on 207.
Before. 207.
Yes, they were on the corner there. In fact, I often wonder now. I see the railroad tracks go right through this property over to that one. Did they own the whole darn thing at one time?
Well, no, the rail went all the way to DuPont.
That's right. They went up there. Was
And back
coal
where the
company
coal
all
yard and
over.
everything, it
Yeah,
went to
that's
DuPont.
right, yeah.
And then that was that.
Yeah.
So Myron, was kind of like the predecessor to Home Depot. They had it orange.
Yeah, they had the idea, but
They had appliances, hardware.
lighting, everything
Yeah,
is
a
sold
pretty
here.
big deal. But they had Newburgh, Kingston, Poughkeepsie. And what guys are saying, people that came in here, they'll say, "Did you look at the design of this building?" Well, I'm saying, "Well, what?" He says, "Mr. Myron thought that gambling was coming to the Hudson Valley in 1975. There was talk of it in Sullivan County. He maybe, and he liked it. Maybe he was interested in gambling. So he kind of had him set up where he could convert it.
Okay.
And the one in Kingston too. And when you look at the building, in 1975, I don't know if this would be the design for a lumber yard.
Well, it was big enough. Yeah, it was different. He was the only big one around
Yes.
at that time. Didn't they own the block company
Yes.
too?
Federal,
Block?
and they owned Montford.
Yeah.
And like my
Okay.
dad was saying, in Poughkeepsie, they bought the property and everything, sold to people the lots. So when they did a housing development, they were,
They
you
owned
know,
it.
vertically built where they controlled
They controlled everything.
everything.
Yep.
You know,
That's why they would give you the refrigerator and the stove when you bought the house.
Well,
If
and
it
then
came with
too, they were, you know, the idea were the concrete, every piece. They had the rail, you know, stuff came in by rail. They
Yes,
were
it
a
did,
big,
yeah.
a big purchaser.
Well, things changed so much, people can't even realize how much rail traffic there was in them days. There were trains all over the
Yeah.
place, and people hitting them too. Not paying attention, and out through Salisbury Mills and that was,
Yeah, 94, that Erie track was,
sure, went to Washingtonville. You had the big mill in Salisbury, coal yards all over the place.
so this is Tom Karanis' address
Yes.
from Newburgh. And with his, the other guy's Manel's Camera Shop, they're gone.
Karanis the father was into motorcycles before the
Oh.
son got into it too. The father rode a Greaves.
I didn't,
Yeah, his
but they
father-
all rode off-road.
Oh, yeah, they all rode off-road.
I didn't know
remember
the
his
father-
The
the father rode.
Yeah, I rode the father's Greaves one day. He said, try this out. I happened to be over to Maroney's, and I took it for a ride. And, because on Sundays, we would end up at Maroney's house lots of times because there was nothing else to do anyplace. You go for a ride, come back there, and we'd sit around, drink beer, ride bikes, whatever the heck you were going to do. And it was a hangout. I mean, it was everybody knew everybody, and that's how life was.
We found a Greaves at the auction, but did they all have that cast front frame?
Yeah, they had
They
that
did.
Earl's Fork thing
Okay.
that went up, but the last ones did have Siriannis on them, but by the time they got to that, they were almost out of business. They didn't really build a competitive motor it was kind of crude, it looked crude, and if you happened to hit the case the wrong way, it moved, and the points moved, and then it didn't run no more, and it was just a headache.
It just looked like it was simplistic. There wasn't a lot of
Yeah.
pieces to it, just that big head with
Yeah,
the big fins.
yeah, they tried everything to cool it. They thought, there wasn't a lot known about two-stroke motors then. And until the rest of them came along in 1970, I gotta get the year right, 78, was it Yamaha come out with the DT1? My gosh, it stayed together. But even the Spanish bikes, you couldn't start them. A Bultaco was a
Bultaco.
bull to start. And a lot of them, they had to push them in circles. Oh, they had Amel carburetors in them days, too. But
Now,
along comes,
excuse me, but an Amel carburetor is the same for 2 or 4 stroke, or no?
yeah, they're the same.
Little bit.
Same design, sure. Got a low-speed jet and a high-speed jet, and they work the same. In fact, the Mike Cuneys almost work the same as an Amel, but they're much more refined. And
The way the slide is and
the
everything.
slide and everything
The
is
floats on
really,
the bottom.
yeah, they
Okay.
really do what they're supposed to do. In the end, Amel made the float out of plastic. I don't even know how you could even think about that, or nylon or something. They had it in there with a little thing on it that lifted.
But they're almost all plastic now, though, right?
Yeah, but they'll make them so that they got some steel coming out of them
Oh,
to
like
work
the
the
pin,
needle.
yeah, the actual mount, or
Yeah,
the,
they when you've seen some of the things they made, you'd wonder how they think this was going to work. Some of it did work, but boy, when you did have problems and you couldn't figure it out, you got to hate them Amels.
but I think by that time, people really knew that the Honda, the Japanese models, there was so many successive models coming out that really good quality.
Oh boy,
The idea where the maintenance is reduced by 80%.
I had a 64 Harley XLCH. I traded that and I got a Greaves to ride the woods with, and my wife got a Suzuki T10, which is like a Hustler. You could walk by that Suzuki and just touch the button and it was running. It had beautiful lights, had extra good brakes, and it went like the devil.
Now,
And,
was that an X6, 6-speed?
No, that wasn't a
Okay.
6-speed. That was the first one, was a T10.
So before the that was
That
before
was
the Hustler.
Before the Hustler, yes.
Boy, when that Hustler came out, right?
Oh, man, when they went past everybody's 74 Harley, that shocked everybody. Leave you in a pile
And
of
it was
smoke. and
two-stroke,
leave you-
right?
Two-stroke.
Two-stroke.
Two-cylinder.
250?
250s. Yeah. And they really were reliable. And that's when people start saying, oh. Then I got off the Greaves and I bought the Yamaha DT1. That must have been 78 because it was the first one. And that was so reliable, everybody bought them because they were riding BSA 250s and Triumph 250s in the woods and ride them in and push them out type of thing. And when they seen the Yamaha went both ways, they all got off
Well,
of
that's
them.
what I had when I was in the late 60s or whatever as a kid. I had a Triumph Cub that my dad gave me. But you can't ride them in the water. It's got a distributor,
Yep.
everything, the shocks,
And-
everything's a problem.
Not good quality at all.
And I was saying to people like, oh, a guy buys a 90cc Bridgestone, that was a better bike than the,
You
than
better
the
believe
200.
it. You better believe it. And if you rode with him in the woods, you'd find out he'd go right over everything.
Even 160 Honda,
Yeah.
again, no problems.
I stayed with the Japanese bikes for a long time. And then I found out about a Mako, which was made in Germany. And boy, I'll tell you, that was some bike. That didn't weigh nothing either. It was a 250, weighed 215 pounds. Really, they built quality stuff too.
But
boy, you
Mako, I
paid
didn't
for it.
realize Mako was German.
Yeah, Maish Company. KTM is on one side of the cornfield, and that's in Austria, and Mako was on the other, and that was in Germany.
And that's nothing to do with CZ.
Nothing to
That's
do with
Czechoslovakia.
Czechoslovakia was another one. The Makos were really excellent bikes from the get-go way back, and they were always fast. I guess they built some road bikes too, but we never had nothing like that here. We had to find out about different things. Husqvarna built a road bike too.
Okay, I didn't realize.
It was a V-twin, 60 cubic inch, I believe, back in the 50s.
Yeah, because some of them early ones downstairs, they're like in the teens, Husqvarna twins, V-twins.
Yes, they had them way back. They used a lot of them on sidecars, I guess. I know when we got into, later when the CHs came out and that, and we were trying to get away from the Vincents. Everybody thought the Vincent was fast. I never seen any of them that really went that great. But then again, we had George Pop was the guy that sold them, and he they only sold one or two.
How would they be priced compared to the Sportster?
Probably outrageous. I think they were probably twice the price.
Oh,
What was a Sportster, about $1,100?
yeah, say 11, yeah, 1,000.
1,100? Oh, they must have been 17 or so, probably.
So-
They had a lousy clutch in them. They had a clutch, I think it only had one plate, like a car clutch would be. In fact, I think it was out of a car. And if you slipped it a little bit, the clutch went on. I know a lot of people like them, and they think they're the answer.
But what was
I
the
don't
thing?
know.
You could take it apart with an Allen wrench? Everything was an Allen wrench? Or
I don't know. I never took any of them,
Oh.
anything apart on none of them.
they were saying you could carry the whole toolkit in your pocket? Like,
Well, George Pop had that one Vincent, and he used to send that down with Bobby Foster riding it.
I remember
Had
Bob
to
Foster.
take on the guys that were riding the Harley Sportsters that were at Maroney's. And Maroney would let us go out and race with him, and we always had something around the shop that went pretty good. And I don't remember a Sportster that didn't stay right with him or beat him, so I don't see where they're so fast.
So where'd you race, right on Broadway?
Right right down the main road,
Mountainville.
whatever happened to be, go down 9W and go down by the Moodna Creek and try it up that hill. Who's got the most power over the top of that hill?
And that's the one, the 9W hill?
9W hill.
The straight up from
Straight
now,
up
there's a
from-
light
yeah,
there.
There's a light there, yeah.
Okay.
Go down there and go up.
That's a long pole.
That's a long pole. Let's see how that goes up through there. And I never seen any of them that went that great. When Harley came out with the CH, that was some fast motorcycle, boy, and it was surprised a lot of people. And Maroney sold quite a few of them too.
Well, you had to wait, right? There was a waiting list a couple of those years.
Well, I worked for another guy at that time, and I came past Maroney's one night, and he had that Harley CH sitting there in a crate. He said, that's a new bike we got coming out. I said, I'm going to go home and eat, and I'll come back. I put it together. When I rode that, I had a new 58 Harley at that time, and I said, I'll trade that in and get me that one. But then a friend of mine bought it out from underneath me, and he was on unemployment, so, but I was working at that time.
But I think in those days, $1,000, $1,200 for a motorcycle was, wasn't like everybody was, could afford one.
No,
still a
but you know
luxury.
what, though, they had Kilburn Finance at that time.
Yeah, the Harley finance.
Harley Finance really helped the Maroni, too, because a lot of them would come in and they'd trade something in, and they could get it financed for whatever, a couple of years or whatever they took it. And then that way they could afford it. But before that, I guess everything was cash or you didn't get it. There was no deal. Send you down to household finance or capital or whatever.
Yeah, at 20% interest.
20% interest, you pay forever. But that's how things were. No credit cards. If you didn't have money, you didn't eat.
So that's the local. So basically, next Wednesday, the rep is coming from Polaris to talk about an Indian dealership.
Oh, yeah?
Well, we're going to help them with some motorcycles for their display. They're going to have a display in Washington, D.C., and we're going to loan them about 6 motorcycles. So when people come to visit their show,
good.
They'll be able to talk. Whether or not they're going to have the whole motorcycle, we don't know. They have the engine ready.
I seen that the engine was ready. That's good.
So we'll know by Wednesday, what he's going to stop by and talk, as far as. But they've put a lot of money into this.
Are they going to put skirted fenders and all on it?
I would imagine.
I imagine they're going to make it look nostalgic.
Because they did the engine.
They did the engine looks that way. Yes, now you're right. Now the exhaust pipes and everything coming out the same place. Be interested to see that.
Whoever initiated it, I'd like to say who in that company, in that organization, really, not that he's taking a chance, it's a big company, but
Right.
that's the first time in 50 years.
And it's not going to have no Polaris parts, so you can't say it's not. It's
there's
an
no
S&S
Victory,
motor
there's
and
no
it's-
whatever.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
It's strictly an Indian. Well, it'd be interesting to see how that comes back. I don't see. We have quite a bit of interest today in all the people that would like to have a dresser. I don't see everybody. You see the gold wings, you see the big Harleys. They're the dressers of yesteryear.
Well, that's what I was, just thinking the other day. I'm looking at some of them big cruiser bikes that are Japanese. Say the guy's going to move up to something that's $20-some thousand or whatever. Even the fellow Tom that's here, he's had 5 or 6 Harleys. He's thinking of a new FLH, but he says, hey, I'll take a look at the Indian.
Why wouldn't you?
He's tired. I mean, some of these guys are just...
And you're tired of seeing yourself come down the road. Everybody out there's got the same looking bike. It's hard to say, but years ago you used to look differently when you see
Well,
that
and I
motor
think
have it.
that's ultimately the thing with any motorcycle guy. He wants his to look
a little bit different. Yeah. And with the skirted fenders and that, they can be nice.
Let's think, if they did that good a job on the motor, the chassis and something should be quite a deal.
Yeah, I think they'll build a nice swinging arm and all
So
that
we'll
stuff.
see, that'll be the next big thing coming out. But as people are moving out of the Harley or people out of the Japanese bikes, they would look at it. A guy that has a Goldwing or something now, he would look at the Indian because he's not a Harley fanatic.
Is the Indian air cooled?
Yes.
It is. See, that's a drawback that I see. You get into bikes that get to be too complicated with too many hoses and radiators and everything else. I mean, it's hard to hide the radiator to begin with when you put it
Well,
on there.
you see even those little Hondas with a radiator. It's,
Yeah, and then when you go to work on them, you take the tank off, and it ain't really a tank for gas. The tank's under the seat, and this covers the water, and oh my gosh.
Yeah, but I think too, though, but isn't something with EPA or the sound, you can't get the air cooled as quiet because of the clearances or?
Well, that's the problem. You need bigger clearances in the pistons and all that because the expansion's got to take place. I don't know, the water cooling definitely helps because the water itself will keep it quieter. But when you listen to an airplane go over, a jet plane go over my house, do I care about the motorcycle going by? The plane's shaking the roof off my house, I don't care about that.
So maybe
it's
it's not
immaterial.
that big a deal. It's only so many cc. It's
Yeah,
not.
and they can quiet it down enough.
And I think they have because they brought all those clearances down.
Guy
With
mows your
different
lawn with
expansion.
one of them big mowers, they make a heck of a racket
Right.
too. They're like
Yeah, on a Sunday morning.
I guess so, sure.
Good, so we'll see what happens on Wednesday, and
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
We'll talk
So they're
again.
coming down and going to get a couple of bikes in?
yeah, well, they're gonna ship those down. I think they've already made a choice of what they needed, but the guy we sent him an application about a year ago for a dealership just to see
Yeah.
how it worked, and he called yesterday like, oh, I'm thinking, you still have that, it's like a whole year, but they have nothing to sell, so it was
Nothing to sell, yeah.
no rush, but boy, it's a big outlay, and it's a major investment.
Yeah, it's really strange to see another big investment like that take over.
But you think of the other countries, they can easily export. Japan, China, those guys in Taiwan are buying those touring bikes, which they're 50 or 60,000 by the time they pay the excise or the duty. And
Well, I think that all the Harley panheads, everybody says, where'd they all go? I think if you want one, you got to go to Germany or someplace over there and
Right.
find out they imported a lot of them. The guys
there's
just
stuff in
came over and bought
every
them.
country.
Every country. So why wouldn't they buy a brand new bike that's ready to go that looks like what they're going to end up with all that money in anyway? So they might as well just get
Well, I
it.
think they did. They did the motor first, which was smart,
Yeah.
and really spend time on it. It's not a clone of anything. It looks, it's feeling the original looks
Yeah.
as that.
And it's a 6-speed.
Yeah, so they know what they're doing as a company. They have dealers, they have financing.
Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad that somebody big took it over. Maybe they can bring
Well,
it
that's
back
what I
to
said.
life.
You know, if it's 9 lives, this is it.
This is it. This is the
gonna
one that
work.
got to pull it off. They can't. If this one don't work,
If he can't do it, if they can't
that
do
they
it.
can't do it. Forget about it. That's not going to get done. But I think a lot of people in other countries will buy them.
Yes.
And look, Harley's selling them throughout the world. All they can build, I guess. So why can't
No,
somebody
you'll
else?
make a difference too, as far, and it's a different style. I mean, when you look at a Harley, say for the last 10 years, that twin cam, there's basically no change. They look the same 2000
Right.
to 2014. So
Well, I think the big fight that before what all the guys had was they were trying to use an S&S motor or something, and it looks so much like a Harley. The guy said, I might as well just go down and buy the Harley, and they wanted more money for it.
Well, yeah, because they were trying to do it during a time when Harleys were short on supply, and then they
Yeah.
thought they could fill that. Same with the Excelsior Henderson guy.
Yeah.
They built that. Every piece is proprietary, but that doesn't have the name that Indian has,
No.
and it wasn't by Polaris.
Well, I'm sure the forks will be good quality and everything when Polaris builds it, because they build quality snowmobiles and everything else. People are going all
They're
over.
probably
with
better on suspension than Harley is.
it. I would think so, yeah. I would think they know their stuff. So,
All right, thanks a lot, Sam.
you're welcome. Glad
We'll
to
get
talk
ready
to
for Wednesday.
you. Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.